about it. Hello, welcome, good afternoon. Amanda Decker, nurse practitioner here. I am joined by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Ken Berry, for a discussion this afternoon. We're going to kind of just walk through a couple of questions that you had, and then kind of our philosophy at the clinic, going through nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep, getting his opinion, and then maybe at the end talk a little bit about our conference in August that is coming up. So it's kind of our agenda. So let's start, Dr. Berry, with about you, because some of my followers, they know you, but they had questions like, how did you come about this proper human diet? So just kind of give a brief synopsis of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm a family physician, and I've been practicing for over 20 years now. And during the first few years of my practice after residency, I started to get fat. And I got really, really fat. And I was working full-time as an ER doc at local ERs and also having a clinic as well. So I basically lived in scrubs, which, as you may know, do give you no indication.
You don't know when fat's hitting you.
Yeah, you have no idea because your scrub still fits, so everything must be okay. And I was eating crap, and I got morbidly obese was the term then, now severely obese. And I tried the American Diabetes Association's diet recommendations because I was also pre-diabetic. And I got more obese and more pre-diabetic after following their literal advice for a month or two. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. I need to start looking outside the box. And so I read around, looked around, did some research, and I kept running into this low carb idea. And I read up on the physiology. I actually got my physiology textbook back out, which is something doctors virtually never do, and started reading over all that. And I'm like, that might work. That kind of makes physiological sense. And so I started low carb, primal, Atkins, that kind of stuff. And then that kind of segued into low carb, then keto. And now ultimately for the last, I don't know how long, I've been a carnivore, which is essentially zero carb. And for me personally, that's where my best metabolic health and my best waistline reside. And so that's kind of how I come upon this, was doing the research, trying to fix my own self, because as a common sense country boy, you can't be a fat doctor and go into people's room and say, okay, look here, Bubba, you need to lose a little bit of weight. Okay. Because they'll look at you like, okay. Yep. I'll jump right on that. I'll be right behind you, doc. And you know the language. You have to put up with the vernacular every day. And so, as in a common sense part of the world, you can't be a fat doctor and then give people nutrition advice. That's just incongruous. And so I had to fix me. And then I started recommending this because obviously my patients noticed a huge difference. They're like, "Holy shit, doc, you look great. What'd you do?" And so for my most morbidly obese patients with a BMI of 35 and above who are contemplating bariatric surgery, because I guess they still do that at the hospital in Dixon. They had just started that.
No, our doctor left town that was doing that. So we don't have
okay. So it was very popular. They're doing a lot of advertising because it was just up the road now. And so everybody who was really, really overweight, they were contemplating having that surgery. And so I'd be like, okay, I'll help you, because there's a process. You got to go through so many months of documentation to qualify for the insurance. And I'd say in the meantime, let's do this diet. And I know it sounds crazy, but I want you to eat this ketogenic diet. And they would come back each month for their follow-up, doing the documentation for bariatric surgery. And they'd be like, dude, I lost another 20 pounds. I lost another 30 pounds. At this rate, I'm not going to need the surgery. And I'm like, that's right. You're not. And so that's when I really thought, man, back then I thought it was just a weight loss hack. You did keto till you got your weight, and then you went back to eating whatever you wanted to. But the more I've researched, the more I've looked into it, not only nutrition and medicine, but also anthropology, archaeology, paleoanthropology. When I started to really branch out into those fields, which I think are very, very important. A lot of people go, what? Paleoanthro? What? Why does that matter? Well, that's the study of what we ate 50,000 years ago, 100,000, 2 million years ago. We can actually tell that stuff from stable isotope analysis and other methods. We know what human beings have eaten for 3.5 million years. And I think that's probably very, very important. And I think it reflects on what we should eat today. I think our diet today, because we are the same species as we were 300,000 years ago, our diet now should mimic that diet.
Yeah.
If you do that, all of the diseases of modern society, which I think Weston A. Price coined that phrase, they go away.
Yeah.
Sometimes completely, sometimes 80, 90%, but they just get better or go away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have people come back and say, Doc, my knee arthritis, I know I'm losing weight, so that probably helps my knee, but I mean, I have no knee pain. And
Yeah.
I was taking 6 ibuprofen a day for every day for knee pain, and now my knee doesn't hurt. Can this diet do that? And initially, I'm like, probably not. That's probably just coincidence. You lost some weight. And then I would have people with chronic reflux for years say, dude, my reflux is gone. Can this diet do that?
Yeah.
And that's when I really got the physiology book out. I'm like, these are, your patients. Some patients, if they tell you something, you're like, okay, let me write that down. Other patients, you're like, he doesn't say things unless he means it. She does not say things unless it really happened. There's that kind of patient, and most doctors know the difference. And these were those patients, those common sense, salt of the earth, no nonsense. They were saying, my reflux is gone. My knee arthritis is gone. My rosacea, I haven't had to use any medicine in a month. Can this diet do that? Mm-hmm. And that's when I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. This is more than just a weight loss hack. And that's kind of led me to what I do today.
Yeah, for sure. And if any of your listeners are here and haven't heard of me, I did a recording of my own story a couple weeks ago and put it out. And I'd encourage them to go listen to it. My struggle with obesity started as a child and not necessarily as an adult, and then kind of was on and off through that. But, when it came to low carb, I've been an NP for 17 years, almost 18 years at this point. When I came to low carb, it was for the weight loss, but I stayed for the other things. I've had psoriasis since the age of 5, and when I completely eliminated grains and sugars and did whole foods low carb, not a lot of these fake product low carbs that are out there, it definitely, I won't say cured my psoriasis because stress will still spike it or something like that, but I am off of all meds and hardly ever have to use creams and ointments and things like that.
Yep.
So it's amazing how, and something I'm going to get into later, is a lot of the chronic diseases that we have all have a root cause. They all have a root link. And it's like we've completely forgot about that in our world today.
How much would you say, if you had to put a number on it, what percentage better is your psoriasis now on average versus back when you were just eating whatever?
Yeah. So at one point I had up to 80% of my body had some amount of psoriasis on it. And so at this point I have one little patch in the back of my head. And then occasionally during stress, I'll get one little patch like on my back. So it's essentially 99% better than what it ever was from the age of 5 to whenever I started this in my 30s. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what I hear from feedback from patients is that it literally, I used to be covered, or I used to have huge patches on my knees and elbows and my belly. And now I have one tiny patch. Sometimes it's on the scalp, sometimes on the leg. And they're like, if that's what psoriasis is, I'm happy to have it. Whatever. I don't even care. But back when I had 80% coverage, I had one lady, she almost wouldn't, the only place she would go was to the doctor because she knew I had seen her psoriasis before. She wouldn't go to the grocery store. She made her husband do everything because she was covered.
People stare at you. It's embarrassing. You can't wear shorts because they're like, what in the world's wrong with your legs and things.
Yep. Is that contagious? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I stay for other things. Like it's cured my daughter's IBS and my daughter's 8. So as long as she stays off wheat, it helps with that. My son has psoriasis. It's all linked kind of in there too. So. And
I think you're right. I think the root cause of many of those things are chronic inappropriate inflammation and hyperinsulinemia. Mm-hmm. And I know that you, Amanda Dicker, check fasting insulins and or see peptides on probably every single patient. And as you know, I'm on a mission to have every doctor in the universe check fasting insulin at least once a year on every single patient that they see, because hyperinsulinemia is one of the root causes of all these chronic medical conditions. And if you don't check a fasting insulin, you have zero idea whether the patient has it or not, because you can be very, very slender and have sky high insulin and sky high inflammation. You can't look at somebody and say, oh, they look healthy. That maybe your hairdresser can do that. But as a healthcare provider, that you should never do that. That is not your job.
No, it hides in plain sight a lot of times, and just get fooled, get tricked. So your diet's mostly carnivore. You occasionally have a little something here and there from just knowing you. My diet kind of cycles through. I'll do bouts of carnivore, especially when my psoriasis gets a little flare. Then I'll do low carb. Then I'll do keto cycling through. I fast sometimes. Do you fast? This is something my viewers wanted to know about. Your ideas on fasting. Is that something that's part of your diet and your recommendations?
Yeah, I do some degree of intermittent fasting every single day. And so, back in the old days when I was fat doctor, I intermittent fasted then. I fasted for 7.5 hours every night while I was asleep. And then the fast ended the minute I woke up, and it lasted, I didn't start fasting until I literally fell asleep after my bedtime snack. But now on average, I fast anywhere from 18 to 22 hours a day, every single day. And again, I think that mimics how our ancestors used to live. They did not have 3 meals and 3 snacks. That didn't happen in the real world back then. They'd very often have 1 meal a day, maybe 2 if they were lucky, maybe 1 meal every other day. And I have done longer 2-day, 3-day fasts. The longest I've ever done was 74 hours, I think. And I didn't stop because I was hungry or in trouble. I stopped because I just missed food like an old friend. I'm like, I miss food. But I think fasting is super powerful. Doing the daily intermittent fast for me, that fits perfectly with my lifestyle currently. If I were to, have a career change and be doing something where I was spoken for, then I might just fast 2 days a week, and then do a 16-hour fast during the day. But I think intermittent fasting is vastly underused and very, very powerful, because when you're not eating, guess what your insulin level is doing? It is returning back to normal. And guess what your levels of inflammation are doing? They're returning back to normal. People don't understand this. This is a very key point. All food is inflammatory. And a lot of people are like, wait, what? I thought carnivore. No, any food you put in your mouth and you chew it up and you swallow it, that is going to cause some degree of an immune response, because your immune system, your gastrointestinal system is the one part of your body where you literally take outside stuff and put on the inside. And that's why you have tonsils. That's why you have immune cells lining your entire gastrointestinal system, is because it's basically a thoroughfare where stuff from the outside comes to the inside. And so your body watches that very closely. So even if you eat meat and eggs, you're going to have a little bit of an immune response. Well, it's checking it out like, no, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. But when you eat junk, you have this sky high spike in the immune response. It's a much different thing. And so that's why when you're eating a proper human diet, your levels of inflammation, which you would measure with a SED rate or a CRP or a homocysteine or a ferritin, there's all kinds of different lab tests that'll help you check that, they start to return to normal.
Can you fast too much? My patients ask me a lot about this whole going into starvation mode and whatnot. So do you think there's a level of too much fasting, or a health condition in which you should not fast in?
So the starvation mode is kind of a false construct. It's not really a thing. And I've read the starvation studies by Ansel Keys. I think it's 2 volumes. It's the driest reading you'll ever read in your life. But he was actually a great researcher and a great scientist when it came to stuff like that. And so during World War II, the conscientious objectors didn't want to go fight. And so the government said, well, you can either go fight, or you can go to prison, or you can go to Minnesota, and Dr. Keys will starve you now. And so they're like, well, I guess I'll go to Minnesota. And so they did all these experiments where they would take healthy young men, I think they're all men, and they would just put them on super calorie restricted diets. Right. And then they would follow that. So starvation mode's not real. That's a myth that people have come up with. You're either eating or you're fasting, right? And the longer you fast, the more good things kind of happen, right? So after you fasted for 18 hours, your rate of autophagy, you always got some autophagy going on, but the rate's going to start to go up after an 18-hour fast, and it'll peak out at about 72 hours. Your rate of growth hormone production goes up. Your rate of testosterone will adjust itself. All these hormones start to adjust when you're not eating. So I would say, can you fast too much? Well, yeah, if you fast long enough, you'll die. You'll starve to death, right? But for the vast majority of Americans, that would take months.
Yep. So got a lot of fat to burn.
And so, my grandmother, Granny Berry, taught me that You can only live for 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. That was that's another false thing that's just not
Yeah.
true at all, right? Now, the 3 minutes for air, that's pretty tight. There's some people that have broken that record, but the average person is going to lose consciousness. But
Mm-hmm.
the food thing, you can go, I think the record's 380 days for fasting, and that guy was severely obese, right? And so I would tell people, if your body fat percentage is above 30, 35, 40%, you can't fast too much. Make
Yeah.
sure and drink your water, get your electrolytes, get your minerals, and just fast. Nothing bad is going to happen to you, right? If you're going to fast for longer than 7 days, you might want to touch base with your healthcare provider just for monitoring and stuff. That's probably unnecessary, but just out of an abundance of caution. I say after 7 days, go see your doc just to make sure everything's okay. But we're designed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing this a long damn time. And so I don't think and so if your body fat percentage is 10%, it probably was pretty easy to fast too much. And we see an example of this in the life of Gandhi. When he first started his peaceful protest, he would go on hunger strikes, right, and do it for weeks and weeks and weeks until the British finally gave in. The last time he tried that, he got very, very sick. And if you see a picture of him right before he started that final hunger strike, he was very, very skinny, very lean, very low body fat percentage. He didn't have the body fat to live on anymore. And he got very, very sick with the fasting. But if any of you guys out there, if you're fluffy like I used to be, you can fast. Okay, it's fine.
Gotcha. All right. I'd say the only thing I'd add is fasting. If you have maybe binge eating disorder, you can sometimes, when you're refeeding, trigger a binge. But there's mixed opinions out there. It's just a lot of trial and error, seeing what can work. And the only other condition I can think of when you shouldn't fast is if you have a hyperinsulinemia or an insulinoma, where you're pumping out a lot of insulin and it doesn't go down just because you're fasting, which normally would happen. But most of us, like you said, everybody should and could fast. I'm going to skip over the exercise, stress, and sleep part that I want to talk about to make sure I get to the questions that people have before you got to go. But digging into nutrition. So when I'm consulting with patients, I get a lot, the kickback that I get for the way of diet that we promote is certain health conditions. I can't do that. So let's just run through those. I can't eat salt because I have hypertension.
Yeah, that's wrong.
No.
Literally, that's completely and totally wrong. And actually, Dr. DiNicolantonio has got a brand new paper out about salt restriction and how unhealthy it actually is. And I don't know if it's a meta-analysis or if he just looked at multiple studies and kind of gleaned all the data from these studies. But if a doctor tells you to avoid salt, that's a red flag. You need to find a new doctor, because first of all, any human on the planet, if you don't give them any salt, they will die in a few days. Literally a few days, you will die if you don't have any salt whatsoever. Now, if a doc says, well, you need to restrict your salt, that's a little bit more reasonable or less unreasonable, right? But still, I would say, well, doc, show me the research where that actually improves my condition. And even in people with moderate heart failure, left-sided heart failure, salt restriction has virtually no beneficial effect whatsoever. Human beings are mammals. Every mammal on the planet needs salt on a daily basis. Now, a lot of people, I've heard this, and you may have heard this, it's like, well, why do you put so much salt on your food? Our ancestors didn't have a salt shaker. And that's true. And then also, why do you use electrolytes? Because our ancestors didn't have relights. They didn't have element, right? So how's that ancestral? Well, back in the day, 50, 100,000 years ago, people drank groundwater, right? They drink mud puddle water, creek water, river water, which is full of electrolytes and minerals. Also, Giardia lambda and other things that'll put you in the hospital. So I don't recommend you drink river water or stream water or mud puddle water. And they also they didn't have block and tackle, so they could pick up 1,000-pound megafauna that they'd killed and drain the blood. So all the blood stayed in the animal, and in many cases they actually went after the blood, right? And as anybody who's had their blood checked to check their sodium or potassium level, how do doctors check that? They check your blood because it's full of it. And so our ancestors used to eat all the blood, and they used to drink groundwater, so they got all the salt and all the electrolytes. And blood, if you've ever pricked your finger and tasted it, it's super salty because it's full of salt.
Yeah.
But so yeah, salt restriction, limiting salt is just terrible medical advice that just almost no research whatsoever supports it. If you
Mhm.
look at the research with the correct paradigm, you're like, this does not show that it benefits you in any way.
No, no. So can you overdo electrolytes? I mean, I routinely encourage people to supplement their electrolytes when eating low carb, especially when first transitioning, but in general, just supplement them. Can you do that too much?
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the county fair and they have an electrolyte drinking contest and you want to win the $50, then
So
yeah, you
it's
can
no big
slam.
hats with it.
Yeah, you can slam too much electrolytes, but if you're having one or two servings a day, you're never gonna
Yes.
get too many electrolytes. Now, there are some people who are on blood pressure medication that will mess with your potassium levels.
Mhm.
They might be a little more careful, maybe check with their doctor, maybe get some lab work checked to see how things are going. Some people with heart conditions need to be very mindful of their magnesium levels, right? And usually it's low magnesium that's the problem. It's not that you had a little too much magnesium. Also,
Mhm.
people need to keep in mind that if you have normal kidney function and you eat a little too much, whatever too much salt is, or you
Mhm.
drink a little an extra serving of Relight or Element or whatever your electrolyte is,
Mhm.
more than you should have, you're just going to pee that out.
Yep.
Literally within an hour, you will urinate that away. It'll be gone.
Yeah. If you're eating low carb, proper human diet, but I tell my people, if you're going to keep eating the same sad diet, the same crap diet, then okay, you probably need to not eat so much, or you change what you eat, then you don't got to worry about it.
That's right.
Yeah. What about minerals? Can you take too many of the minerals? Or is
Again, if
like
you're
what?
if you're getting the minerals from your food, and on my YouTube channel, I've got a video about just about every single mineral and the foods that are richest in that mineral. But if you're using something like Keto Chow's daily minerals,
Yeah.
if you use one serving a day, you're never going to get too many. Now, if you're taking 10 servings a day because you're not bright,
Yeah.
you might get too much of one of the minerals. But if you're using a serving a day, no, it's impossible.
Gotcha. All right. What about the can't eat red meat because I have heart disease, cholesterol, or gout? Those are my favorite ones to go in.
Yeah, and I've got videos about all
Yeah.
those topics, right? So red meat does not cause gout. No
Yep.
meat causes gout. That's not what causes gout. For more information, see my YouTube video about gout.
Yeah.
Same for heart disease. When you look at the research that your cardiologist might say, well, it's been proven that red meat is bad for your heart or causes heart attacks or makes heart failure worse. Ask your doctor. Don't be brave, but be diplomatic. Say, I'd love a copy of that study. I'd love to read that. And what you're going to find is in every single case, it's an observational study. It's an observational cohort where they follow people and they ask food frequency questionnaires, which is terrible data. And then they'll do that for over a few years. And then they might ask them the food questions once or twice out of 10 years,
Mhm.
right? And then they'll publish that like that's useful data. That doesn't tell you anything about what the patient ate on a daily basis. And so then they'll say, oh, see, the people who self-reported that they ate more red meat, their heart disease was 0.1% worse. Okay, all right. Because you know what, Amanda, if red meat were as demonic
Mhm.
as it's painted, right? This is a good point for everybody. Think about this. If it were as disastrous to eat red meat as they make it out to be, I mean, doctors get emotionally upset. They get that vein starts sticking out. They just get pissed off if you're eating red meat. If it were that dangerous, then somebody who's been eating nothing but red meat for 3 or 4 years, they should have severe heart failure. They should have had a heart attack or two. You and I both know people who have been carnivore for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years or longer. That shouldn't be compatible with life
Mm-mm.
if it's that dangerous. Now, if what they're saying is it might be a tiny bit dangerous, okay, I'll let you say that. That's fine. But if you're going to act like eating red meat is the leading cause of,
Yeah.
no, you're being silly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when I get asked the gout question, I kind of chuckle because I'm like, well, how did my vegan patient get gout then? Because I've had
Exactly.
multiple vegan or vegetarian patients that come back with gout, and it's more about the insulin than it is even the uric
Yep.
acid. The uric acid wouldn't be a problem without the elevated insulin. So,
There's a really cool woodcut that was done back in the 15 or 1600s, and it shows this. It literally is a painting of gout, and
mhm.
it shows this really fat guy, right? He's like a middle-aged fat guy sitting in his chair. So he's sedentary, he's overweight, and he's a guy, right?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of risk factors. And he's drinking wine, and he's got grapes and other fruits on his and a big loaf of bread. And
There's no
then
need
down at the bottom, there's this demon chewing on his first metatarsal joint where his gout's flared up. And like that's literally that picture. That's the summation of what causes gout right there.
Yep.
If you do what he does and drinks what he drank and ate what he ate, you'll get gout.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with red meat.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the can't eat protein because my kidney functions are a little funky?
Yeah. So this is one of the very first myths I can remember, probably back in 2004, being in the cubby at the Berry Clinic, and some patient had come back from nephrology and said, he told me I need to cut back on protein because it's bad for my kidneys. And again, I try to always remember the physiology. And I'm like, how is that even possible? The kidneys are built out of protein. I don't get that. And so I started looking into it. And even back in 2004, there was probably 50 articles on the internet written by doctors saying, where's this myth coming from that protein is bad for your kidneys? Who keeps saying this? Because we can't find any research that supports it. And also it doesn't make any physiological sense. And I'm like, okay, so I was right about something. Huzzah. Because, back then that was rare. But there's literally no research that shows that eating healthy animal protein is going to harm your kidneys in any way. And you may have seen this in your practice, Amanda, but we've had hundreds of people now in our private community who had stage 1 CKD, stage 2, even stage 3A or 3B. And after 6 months of carnivore, they go back for the recheck and it's improved a complete stage. Have you had that in any patients?
Oh, I have seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like that's kind of the rule instead of the exception, at least with the people in our group. They start out with 2 and they wind up with 1. They start out with 1 and they go back to normal kidney function. We had one lady with late stage 2, and now she has completely normal kidney function. She's on a carnivore diet. Yeah. And I think just, one anecdote may not disprove something, but what about 5,000, 10,000, 100,000? I don't know. At some point, the anecdotes probably add up.
They do. So one of my followers asked about why sugars would go up on carnivore. And I'm assuming they're talking about the fasting sugars, because sometimes after years of carnivore, you see your fasting creep up a little bit. Can you briefly say why that is?
Yeah, there's several things. So what they may be talking about is that now that they're carnivore, their fasting blood sugar is the highest blood sugar they see all day. And that used to be the exact opposite, right? They'd start out with a decent blood sugar, and then by the end of the day, it was, oh my God, let's not talk about it, right? But now, so for carnivores, they might wake up with 100 or 105. And if you've been previously pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, that's spooky. You're like, oh crap. This is not, I don't think this is right. But then when they eat, it goes down to 80, right? And then every time they eat a meal full of healthy animal fat and healthy animal protein, their blood sugars either stays the same or goes down. That's the common pattern we see for carnivores, is that your morning blood sugar is the highest blood sugar of the day. Anytime you fast, your blood sugar is going to go up. That's completely normal. That's not pathology. That's physiology. If you work out really hard, either at a job or in the gym, your blood sugar is going to go up. That is not pathology. That's physiology. It's supposed to do that. Now, what we have noticed in about 3 or 4% of carnivores who've been doing it for years is that their hemoglobin A1C will start to creep back up into the high 5s. And I've been talking with Eric Westman about this and Professor Ben Bickman. And our current theory is, and I think if you look at the research in physiology, I think it bears this out. The average red blood cell, which is where we check, right, for the glycation, the average red blood cell lives about 110 days on average. It's different for different people with different conditions. But what we think is happening is that because your red blood cells are now built of much better building materials, they're living 115, 120, 130 days. And that just gives them more time to glycate. Now, some degree of glycation is not bad. Yeah. No matter, literally, if you ate just pure fat and nothing else, your A1C would still be probably 3.5 or something. You're still going to have some degree of glycation. But the only way that a carnivore can have that much glycation is if the red blood cells are living longer. And indeed, in some of the research we found, eating a really, really nutrient dense diet, red blood cells live longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that with physiology and how that works.
Oh, let me also add this. It's very important. The only thing that a hemoglobin A1C checks for is glycation from glucose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It cannot detect glycation from fructose.
Mm.
It also cannot detect glycation from galactose, which is one of the sugars in lactose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of people now who think, oh, I'm going to eat a lot of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh, look, it's great. My blood sugar is normal, right? That's glucose. And also my A1C is normal. So I know that this is healthy. Well, you can have severe hyperfructosemia and still have a normal A1C. And I got into a little spat with my buddy, Dr. Saladino, about this. And in the paper that he cited, at the end of the paper, it actually says that the A1C testing we're using cannot detect fructosuria. It cannot detect fructosemia. It can only detect the glucose that's attached to either leucine or glycine. I can't remember which amino acid, but that's what the test looks for. And so people who think a lot of honey or a lot of fruit is healthy, you're glycating your tissues and organs, and you cannot detect that glycation by just checking A1C. And a fructosamine also doesn't check that. It still checks glucose glycation.
Yeah. Yeah. So another one of my clients or followers, whatever you want to call them, asked about using proper human diet, keto diet for aiding cancer therapy, not curing it, but and aiding it. I have my own opinions about that. Your opinions?
Absolutely. In the coming weeks, I'm going to have Dr. Thomas Seyfried as a guest on my YouTube channel. He's one of the preeminent researchers in cancer. And he really focuses on cancer as a metabolic disease. And I think he's absolutely right about that. Now, let's be very clear. What I'm about to say, I'm saying about solid tumor cancers. Okay. So I'm not talking about blood cancers and bone marrow cancers. I'm talking about breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, any solid tumor cancer. That cancer loves sugar. And that is just that's the end. You can't even argue with that. Okay. When we do a PET scan looking for cancer, we attach sugar to the molecule that the PET scan uses so that the cancer cell will take up the molecule. So then we can then see the cancer cell on the PET scan. That's how PET scans work, is they dangle sugar in front of the nose of the cancer cells and they're like, yum, gimme. And they gobble up all the sugar. And that's why the cancer glows in the dark on a PET scan.
Yeah.
Right. So there are some cancers that can limp by on glutamine and even a few on ketones. But the only way a cancer can thrive and metastasize is in the atmosphere of a high blood sugar environment where somebody's eating too many carbohydrates. So I am a huge proponent. If you're diagnosed with cancer, you need to go keto immediately. And when you go to your oncologist and go to the radiation therapy treatment, and after your treatment, they try to give you the cookies and orange juice, you say, no, I'm trying to live. I'm trying to beat the cancer. So I'm not going to eat that junk. But I do have some bacon and some boiled eggs that I'm going to eat right now. And so thanks for nothing. But yeah, absolutely. If you've been diagnosed with a cancer and you're fighting that, keto is going to improve your chances of beating that cancer and improve your chances of survival.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And even going into therapies, doing a little fasting, if you're able to do it, going into that chemo or radiation can help improve side effects and that kind of thing. There's a great book called Keto for Cancer. If anybody is struggling with it, I recommend checking out Miriam's book because it's got some great information in it. And she also does coaching people through their cancer therapies and helping them make sure they're on the right track. So check out that Keto for Cancer book. So let's try to take like 5 minutes and then we'll take 2 minutes at the end and talk about the conference real quick. But our thoughts on injections for weight loss. And there's two different injections that I want to talk about. One that one of my clients asked about that we started doing here in the clinic is called MICB injections. Don't know if you're familiar with those, but basically B12 type stuff, and then the GLP-1s. And if anybody wants to know my true opinion on GLP-1s, because I want to get Dr. Barry's here, I've got a video talking about GLP-1s for weight loss therapy. You can check that out. The MIC-B shots, yes, we have them at the clinic, but I've been very forward with my opinion from the beginning. They're not a miracle. They're not going to hurt you. It's basically a mixture of B12s and B6s and amino acids. And some people feel like that is helpful for them. And I am all for anything for weight loss that helps my patients feel like they can do better on their journey if it's not going to cause them harm. So your opinion on MIC-B?
The MIC-B shots, we gave those for years at the clinic before the fire. We called them MIC Ultra because I think it maybe had adenosine added.
You weren't thinking of Michelob Ultra there?
No, not that. No. But they were super popular, and some people would try them and say, "I can't tell any difference." Other people would try them, and they're like, "Dude, can I get one every week?" I'm like, "Yeah, if you want it." And I think if you're eating a standard American diet and you're deficient in those things, a mix shot's going to be semi-miraculous for you. But if you're eating a proper human diet, I feel like you're probably not going to notice any benefit whatsoever from the mix shot. But yeah, I gave them for years. I 100% know they're not going to harm anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And if they help, great. If not, man, what was it, $20?
Yeah. Just don't get another. Yeah, that's simple. And so GLP-1s, your quick, concise thoughts. Maybe we could do a whole episode on this, and maybe we could.
Absolutely. So I predict that this is not going to end well with the Ozempic and the Wegovy. This class of drugs has been approved for type 2 diabetes for what,
17 years.
17 years, right?
When I came out in practice,
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, but they were used at lower doses for type 2 diabetes.
And they started as shorter acting type things, and they've grown. Yeah,
exactly. And so using these for obesity, I predict is going to end badly because, and I'm actually working on getting a YouTube video worked up about this. But in a nutshell, basically what you're doing these are GLP-1 agonists. So they work at the GLP-1 receptor. Now you have GLP-1 receptors in your brain and in your gut. We know that. But did you know that you also have them in your kidney? Wonder what they do. You also have them in not just in your stomach, but in the whole of your gastrointestinal system. Wonder what those do. You also have these receptors in blood vessels, and you also have them in many other places. And so it's classic for big pharma to find out, this works on this receptor, and we know this receptor has something to do with this. We're going to patent that, buddy, and we're going to make $1 billion. But what they're not going to do is all the extra research needed to say, well, what about those GLP-1 receptors in the kidneys? Could this be a problem there? I don't know. And so basically what happens is they get this FDA approval. And now, you know what the experiment that's being done? It's being done on you if you're taking Ozempic. They're waiting for something bad to happen to you and then report that to your doctor. Then your doctor will report that to the database. And when they've got enough signal, oh gosh, something's going wrong with the kidneys or something's going wrong in the brain, then they'll say, oh, well, maybe we need to look at this. And then they'll put a black box warning. It's already got one, and then they'll have a second. But when you take away somebody's innate, instinctual drive to breathe, that's probably a bad idea. Or their instinctual drive to drink water, that's probably dumb. That's probably going to end badly. When you erase somebody's instinctual drive to eat, that's probably not going to end well. And I predict if you think something's going to cause an eating disorder or making an eating disorder worse, watch Ozempic and Wegovy. If you think that something is going to cause the number of fat cells you have in your body to actually increase.
Yeah, that's my main concern right there right now.
You hate food while you're injecting the Ozempic. Yeah. You don't even want food.
It stays teeny and small.
And your little fat cells are just dividing, but they're staying tiny. But then the second that your insurance says, hey, Bubba, we're not paying for Ozempic anymore, or you lose your job, or you have a side effect and you stop taking it, now you've got 5 times as many fat cells. And your appetite's going to come back because your appetite is not your enemy. Your appetite is part of your ancestral wiring. It's good that you have an appetite. So it's going to come back. And now you're going to start eating. And if you're still eating all the junk that you ate before, boom, you're going to blow up. You're going to gain everything back plus probably 30 to 50 pounds more than you started with. That's my prediction. Yeah. And then I was going to say one more thing, but I forgot it. So proceed.
No, the fat part is the growing of new fat cells. That's my number one concern. And
Yeah.
long term, what does that look like? And now that we're giving them to kids, what happens when they're 20 and come off of it for
Yeah.
whatever reason?
And
Because
we know
or something.
from anthropology and psychological research, we know that the human brain is not even completely finished growing and developing until the age of 25.
Yeah.
That's known. That's not debatable, right? And so now the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, is saying you should aggressively start using these injections at the age of 13 for children who are obese. These children don't even know who they are yet. They're not even completely in touch with what true hunger feels like, what true satiety, the pleasure of eating good nutrient dense food. They haven't had enough experience with all that. And you're going to take that instinctual hunger drive away from them for decades and expect that not to end badly. Let me just put it this way. I don't own any stock in Novo Nordisk, nor will I ever buy any, because I don't think it's going to end well.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I am always for patient choice. And if my patients choose to use them and want that as part of their journey, then I will definitely do that. But informed consent, to the fullest of my knowledge, I think is important. It's important for the patient to be fully informed. And there is a lot we just don't know. Absolutely. All right. I know you got to run. So real quick, the conference. So it was January, not of 2022, or was it? Yeah, January 2022. We were sitting in Boca. And we're like, man, we got to do something in our local area. We can do more for our people here in Tennessee. And so we put together an event. We named it Low Carb for Better Health. You came up with a lovely name and had a little half-day event with a couple of speakers. We had 178 people show up last year. There was a COVID spike around that time. We were supposed to have about 234. I thought that was pretty amazing for a quick throw together, first time, small community. But this year, we're going bigger and better. We're making it a whole year. That'd be a bad event. A whole day event. No, can't do it a whole year. Whole day event. It's going to be at Montgomery-Bell State Park on August 26th. We've got multiple speakers. You and Miss Nisha will be joining us again. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, just spreading the love to our community. Tickets, I think, are pretty reasonable. So the $30 if you want to come and get the whole day and some vendors and things, $50 if you want to share a meal time with us and have free access to, or not free access, paid access to all the speakers and things of that nature. Anything you want to say about last year's event? And
I thought last year's event was great. You did a great job setting it up, but I think I love those people. That's my people right there. Just common sense. Just tell me what I need to do. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't be blah, blah, blah. Just 1, 2, 3. What do I need to do? And that's exactly the kind of people that were there last year. And I suspect that'll be who's there this year. Yeah. And that's the kind of people who, when they hear somebody who's earnest and seems like they know what they're talking about, also they did it for their own selves. That's the kind of people that go home and say, okay, that's what we're doing. And that's what I'm going to do. And then 6 months later, they've got to buy all new clothes. And I'm sorry, but also you're welcome.
For sure. So the tickets are on Eventbrite. Just look for Low Carb for Better Health, or you can go to my Facebook page and then will be marked there for you to go get tickets. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it and loved our conversation. Hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I'll see you at Montgomery-Bell State Park.
Woohoo! On the 26th of August. Bye.
Bye-bye.